Welcome to the Click podcast. I'm Dani Watson, a mindset and manifestation expert and founder of The Click, a company that helps women overcome their fears and limiting beliefs to create a life and business that they love. Within this podcast, I will help you get clear on what you want, identify the blocks that are holding you back, transform your mindset and raise your vibration so that you can co-create magic with the universe. If you are looking to design a life that truly sets your soul on fire and manifest more success and abundance, then you are in the right place. Hello ladies, and welcome to a brand new episode. Let's start this episode with a bit of a life update and also maybe a little life lesson thrown in. What I will say is be careful what you wish for when it comes to manifestation and what you're asking the universe for, because it may just come true and maybe you get exactly what you're asking for, but it turns out you don't really want it that much. So let me explain. I recently have been focusing a lot on bad weather. Now, if you are somewhere right now where the weather is not great, you're probably thinking that I sound crazy. But I think I've mentioned this before. I love living here in the south of Spain, but one thing that I've really started to miss is the change of the seasons. Now, we do have seasons, but it's still very warm, very sunny, and that is lovely. But recently I've been craving the cozy vibes of autumn. I want it to get cold. I want to start wearing snuggly jumpers and being indoors and light the fire and all of the autumn things that I associate with autumn from previously living in the UK and growing up in the UK. So I've been focusing a lot on just wanting it to be cold, even rainy. I was saying to myself and just saying to anybody, I'd love for a really rainy day so I could just be indoors for the day and just get cozy. And boy, did it rain. I kind of knew I was a powerful manifester, but this sort of took things to a whole new level because it rained. It rained harder than what I have ever seen it rain before since we have moved here. And it rained to the point that our house actually kind of had a lot of water coming in, and our lower ground level received so much water that it kind of almost started to flood. So the drains here, the drains that we have sort of in our garden, just obviously were not prepared for the level of rain that we had. And so they very quickly kind of filled up. And our house is essentially built into kind of like a hill. So we have sort of like steps that go down to our lower ground level. And that basically turned into a waterfall. And I realized that I've been asking for this. I've been asking for rain. And so I guess the lesson behind this is that you have to be prepared to receive what it is that you're asking for and make sure that you are specific with the universe about your desire. Because I asked for rain and it really went all in on giving me that. And really, I probably just meant a little bit of a light drizzle. So that is my life update. Other interesting things that have happened recently. We went to Feria. So luckily the rain only lasted a day or two. And now we're back to beautiful sunshine again. And this time of the year, they have a huge feria in this region of Spain. Ferias are very popular all over Spain. They're basically like a festival. So kind of think sort of rides, like your typical kind of like fun fair. But in Andalusia, the tradition is flamenco is very much an Andalusian tradition. So all of the Spanish ladies and the little girls wear these beautiful flamenco dresses. They horse ride in their flamenco dresses. And I love all of that. So we had a really fun time at Feria. We all went on the Ferris wheel. The kids went on some rides. It was really, really lovely. So life update over. Let's jump into the episode because this is an interesting one. And I want to talk about how sometimes we can confuse an addictive personality with actually just an inability to self-soothe. Self-soothe. Bit of a tongue twister. For years, I convinced myself that I was somebody that had an addictive personality. So if I got into something, I would get very addicted to it, and I would get consumed by whatever it was I'd immerse myself into. And sometimes these were healthy habits. So there's been times when I've been addicted to exercise, addicted to yoga, but often they've actually been unhealthy habits. So I've been addicted to online shopping. I've been addicted to eating too much. I've been addicted to eating too little. I've been addicted to drinking wine in the evening and partying too hard. So whatever the patterns are, binge watching Netflix, that's another good example. Whatever sort of addiction cycle, if you're finding yourself in one, maybe you're convincing yourself, I have an addictive personality, and if I start something, like I don't know my limits. But actually something which was almost a relief when I discovered this was that I wasn't necessarily somebody with an addictive personality. I just really, really struggled to self-soothe in a healthy, normal way. Now, in the world that we live in, which is fast-paced, it's a demanding world, we're often finding ourselves grappling with overwhelming emotions such as stress, anxiety. The need for us to be able to self-soothe is very prevalent. However, again, we can often find ourselves turning to these addictive behaviors, whether it's, substance use, drinking, compulsive shopping, whatever it is, as a way to seek comfort from the overwhelm and stress of the world in which we live. Now, at the heart of these addictive behaviors, what it actually is a fundamental human need for self-soothing. So what do I mean by self-soothing? I feel like I can't say that properly. Self-soothing. It actually refers to strategies that we can use to essentially calm ourselves and manage our emotions. So when we're stressed, when we're facing distress, sadness, it's something that we can do to manage our emotions in a healthy way. But when we don't have access to self-soothing techniques, or we're not able to self-soothe, this is where we can form a reliance on these addictive behaviors. And these behaviors basically create a temporary escape from whatever emotional pain that we're feeling. But the other side of that, the double-edged sword, is that it can often then lead to this cycle of shame, guilt, and therefore even more emotional turmoil. So when I think back to my one of my patterns of behavior in the past was compulsive shopping. And it's funny because this still rears its head every now and again, where I find myself sort of zoning out and compulsively shopping online without necessarily even thinking what I'm buying. I'm just sort of looking for that quick fix of something that's going to make me feel better. I can catch myself in the moment now. I have that awareness. But previously, I just thought I'm addicted to shopping. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get a control of myself? Like, why am I acting this way? And I would sort of shame myself, beat myself up, and that would just make me feel even worse about myself. But for me, really understanding the connection between our addictive behaviors and the struggle to self-soothe was my first sort of step in breaking the cycle. Now, it's important to know that when we're in these patterns, negative patterns of behavior, these addictions, we're not doing it because we're a weak person. So often we'll tell ourselves, oh, I'm weak, I've got no self-control, maybe it's grabbing the chocolate every night, and we tell ourselves, I just have no self-control when it comes to chocolate. And often that inherent weakness, that isn't the problem. Rather, we're actually responding to deeper emotional wounds, should I say, and unmet needs. So recognizing this can actually help you be more compassionate towards yourself, and also perhaps also more compassionate towards others as well, if you see them in these sort of negative cycles. So it's really important then to differentiate between having an addictive personality and just simply struggling with self-soothing. So if you're somebody who does perhaps find yourself in these sort of addictive patterns of self-sabotage, I want to invite you today to start seeing yourself, rather than seeing yourself as fundamentally flawed or, doomed to just repeat this addiction forever, actually see this as an opportunity for growth and healing. Now, I just want to start by just giving a bit of an overview of what self-soothing actually looks like. So I think for me at the heart, it's the ability to emotionally regulate your emotions, managing your emotions by reducing feelings of anxiety, sadness, anger, not diminishing the emotions, like honoring and accepting your emotions, but being able to manage them in a healthy way without having to turn to these addictive patterns. It also includes different techniques and strategies. So these might be things like mindfulness and meditation. It could be breathing practices. It could be progressive muscle relaxation. It could be physical activity, hobbies, listening to music. It can be a wide range of different techniques that will help you self-soothe that are healthier than some of the addictive patterns that you would normally turn to. Self-soothing also includes self-compassion. It's about being kind to yourself when you are experiencing something difficult and actually recognizing that it is okay to feel upset, giving yourself permission to feel the emotions, giving yourself a break when you need to have a break. This might also include creating a safe space where you actually feel safe to self-soothe or actually kind of allow those emotions to come out. So maybe it's a place where you can go and you can cry, or you can punch a pillow, or maybe it's going to a place where you can spend some time visualizing, or a place that just makes you feel calm. Now, it's one thing to actually know how to self-soothe and have these strategies that are going to help you regulate your emotions, but to be able to implement these effectively and consistently, it's first important to understand why you may be experiencing difficulties in self-soothing in the first place. Like, where does the root cause of this inability to self-soothe come from? So for most part, it's going to stem back to something that's occurred during childhood. So it may be that you've just not been given the skills or strategies to self-soothe yourself. So strategies such as mindfulness, deep breathing, enjoyable activities. So if you don't have the knowledge or awareness of different self-soothing techniques, it can actually be hard to calm yourself during those difficult times. Now, it may be that your parents or your primary caregivers, they didn't know how to self-soothe. So this wasn't a skill that they were passing on to you. Because it's something that I'm very aware of, I am now teaching my kids how to try and self-soothe. So I'm already recognizing that for my son, who's 3, he is naturally wanting to gravitate to a bottle of milk and watching cartoons. That is his self-soothing mechanism. Now that's fine at the moment because he's a 3-year-old, but I want to also help him incorporate some other self-soothing strategies because I don't want his response to strong emotions to be to numb them out, zone them out, and distract himself, because I know that long term that's not necessarily healthy either. I know that that's been a strategy I've used, and binge watching Netflix series is not something I really want to be doing all of the time, and I've done that as a way to avoid feeling what I'm feeling. So I'm trying to incorporate more simple practices, things like mindfulness, meditation, breathing exercises. So with my daughter, for example, when she gets really angry with her brother or her sister, and I can see that she's getting herself worked up, I've taught her a very simple, basic breathing exercise that she can do, which helps her process that feeling of anger and frustration. Now, something that I found really interesting when it came to really understanding our inability to self-soothe is related to our attachment styles. So this was something I actually studied at A-level. I did psychology at A-level. So it was really interesting for me to come back into this work and actually see it more in a relevant sort of way, in a way that sort of applied to my life. So attachment theory then, it really is about the quality of early relationships with our caregivers. So this will be sort of your parents or whoever was responsible for raising you. So we have secure attachment, where this is really characterized by responsive, nurturing caregiving, where there's a real sense of safety and emotional security within the child. Children that have had secure attachment learn to trust their needs will be met. And because of this, they're able to then develop effective self-soothing techniques. Now, on the other hand, if we experience insecure attachment, so this could be neglect, maybe it's just inconsistency, emotional unavailability, children who experience insecure attachment may struggle to self-soothe effectively. So let's give an example. So let's say you've got a parent and one moment they're really nurturing, they're really responsive, but then at other times they're really critical. Now, this creates an inconsistency, and this inconsistency makes the child feel confused. They don't know if they're coming or going. Like one moment the parent's being really loving, really nurturing, the next they're being really demanding, really critical, and the child learns that their emotional needs may not always be met reliably. So because of this, they feel insecure in that relationship and therefore uncertain about how to seek comfort. Now, how this plays out, it can play out first of all in hypervigilance. So this is when we become so acutely aware of our parents' moods and their behaviors, and we're therefore constantly scanning for signs for approval or disapproval. So let's say you grew up in an explosive household and you had a parent, let's say your mother, blew from hot to cold. You kind of didn't know where you stood with her. You didn't know if she was going to be really sweet and kind and loving with you, or if she was about to shout at you and be really, really critical. When we experience that inconsistency, we are in this hypervigilant state. We're kind of on this treading on eggshells. And this heightened sensitivity can actually lead the child to become overly anxious about their own emotions and the emotional states of others. Now, there could also be the other characteristic of anxious attachment is clinginess. So to cope with their fears, children may cling to their caregivers, or maybe they're seeking excessive reassurance. They always need that reassurance or that approval from the parent. And this behavior actually stems from the belief that they need to stay close to someone to feel safe and secure. Now, as a result of this upbringing, children with this anxious attachment will often learn to rely on external validation to manage their emotions. So it may be that the child constantly seeks approval, they constantly need that reassurance from others, maybe they second guess themselves all the time. Now, because children with anxious attachment look to others for their emotional regulation, they therefore then struggle to develop these internal self-soothing strategies. So this is why they will find it difficult to identify their emotions, because they're often so focused on how others are feeling. So for example, how is my explosive parent going to react in this moment? They're so focused on the feelings of others and responding to how others are feeling, responding to these external cues, that the child may actually find it difficult and challenging to identify and articulate their own emotions. Now, weaved into this is also that fear of emotional expression. So if a child is anxiously attached, they actually might be afraid to express their emotions because they could believe in doing so it might lead to rejection or disapproval. It's this not knowing what to expect from their caregiver and assuming the worst. So assuming that, well, if I express my emotions, maybe I will be rejected, maybe they won't want me, I'll be abandoned. And this fear can then hinder their ability to engage in self-soothing activities, actually, embracing their emotions. And they might actually avoid confronting their feelings altogether. Now, it can still be that a child has had secure attachment with their parents at a young age, yet still struggles to self-soothe. So I've worked with lots of clients who've grown up in a very securely attached household, have parents that have been emotionally available for them, yet still struggle with this self-soothing piece. And I think a big part of the problem is the fact that we have so many distractions available to us that can be used as a way to avoid our feelings, to numb out, to zone out. If we think about it, our phone, it's always on us. How many times do you pick up a phone, open up Instagram and scroll aimlessly? And you don't even know why you're doing it. It's an addictive pattern that you've fallen into. And what you're doing, it's a way to kind of get a quick fix of feel good factor. And it's also a way to just zone out, numb out, avoid what it is that you're feeling, avoid the hard emotions. But what happens when we zone out is that we essentially just numb ourselves. So things like scrolling on Instagram, they may feel good whilst we're doing it. We're getting that dopamine hit. But once we close the app, we're straight back to where we left off, feeling empty, feeling sad, feeling the pain. And so we've not really dealt with our emotions in a healthy way. We've just avoided them completely. So this is why we need healthier self-soothing strategies that are actually going to help us manage and regulate our emotions and help us to feel better rather than just sort of numbing ourselves out. Now, something that I found really interesting when I was sort of learning more about self-soothing is that it really affects the brain in quite a significant way. So maybe you've heard the term before, neuroplasticity. So this essentially refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections through our life. So we can basically create new patterns of behavior through neuroplasticity. And when we engage in self-soothing practices, these can actually promote neuroplasticity and actually help us develop healthier emotional responses. So if we are regularly practicing self-soothing techniques, these can actually strengthen the neural pathways associated with emotional regulation. And this then makes it easier to manage stress and anxiety over time. So we can actually become more resilient to anxiety and stress. We can deal with it in a better way. If we are practicing self-soothing, it will just become an habitual way of being. Contrast that with, let's say we're just zoning out. We're not self-soothing at all. We're just numbing ourselves. We're just avoiding our emotions. So let's say your response is to pick up your phone and scroll through Instagram. We're not building up our resilience to stress and anxiety. As soon as we put our phone down, if we experience something stressful or something that makes us feel anxious, we're just going to feel the stress and anxiety all over again. We've not learned how to manage and deal with stress and anxiety. So it's only ever going to be a short-term fix. Again, why these self-soothing practices are so important. So let's now dive into how we can actually start to self-soothe. And I think for me, this really starts first of all in identifying your own specific needs. If we want to develop effective self-soothing skills, we need to know what our emotional landscape is and what we actually need. So this is where self-reflection can really be powerful for understanding your emotional needs and actually identifying the areas where you need comfort, where you need support. So things like journaling can really help here. Thinking about what emotions have I felt today? What triggered those emotions? When did I last feel really calm? When did I last feel really content? And what actually contributed to that feeling? Maybe asking yourself, are there specific situations or specific people that consistently evoke strong emotional reactions in me? So actually getting clearer on your patterns and your emotional responses and actually understanding your needs better. And then actually having regular emotional check-ins. So asking yourself intermittently through your day, how do I feel right now? So it might be writing down those feelings or just vocalizing those feelings out loud, paying attention to your bodily cues as well. So what physical sensations accompany these feelings? And then asking, what do I need in this moment to feel better? So maybe it's emotional support, maybe you just need a break, maybe you need to punch a pillow, but just actually getting into the habit of asking yourself, what do I need right now? And then once you've gained a bit of an understanding into your emotional needs, the next step is to create a personal emotional inventory. So what this inventory will do is to help you recognize the patterns and actually prepare for the moments when you're going to need those self-soothing techniques. So to create your inventory then, you're first of all going to list your emotional triggers. So this is where you want to identify specific situations or events or interactions with others that will always feel like they evoke strong emotions in you. So write down what your triggers are. Write down how these triggers actually make you feel. And then once you've got your emotional triggers list, I want you to assess your coping mechanism. So for each trigger, I want you to reflect on how you would typically respond. Okay, so are your coping mechanisms, are they typically healthy or unhealthy? So unhealthy would be zoning out. So maybe you're zoning out through scrolling through your phone. Maybe you binge watch TV. Maybe you start drinking. Maybe you start compulsively shopping online. Recognizing, is this a wanted behavior or an unwanted behavior? So just really noting any patterns of behavior that emerge. And once you've identified your coping mechanism, you're next going to identify your desired outcome. So think about, what emotional state would you like to achieve when faced with these triggers? So let's say, for example, you've got something happening within your work. You've got a deadline at work and it's causing you a huge amount of anxiety and stress. Your desired outcome might be one of calm, focus, I've got this kind of attitude. So identify your desired outcome. And then next, create action steps. So for each trigger, outline specific self-soothing techniques that will help you achieve your desired emotional state. Okay, so the idea is that you know how to respond and take action when you are experiencing an unwanted emotional state. Now, these self-soothing techniques, these are things that you're going to probably want to play around with. The idea is that you build up basically a self-soothing toolbox. So this could be things like mindfulness practices, breathing exercises, body scans. It might be using visualization. It might be doing physical activities such as yoga or walking or dancing. Maybe it's being creative. Maybe it's using a different sense. So maybe it's aromatherapy, using essential oils. Maybe it's taking a warm bath. But the idea is that you want to find the right self-soothing technique for you according to your specific trigger. So it might be that different situations require you to use a different technique. But it's going to be a bit of an exploration process where you give yourself the freedom to try these different techniques. Don't judge yourself. Not every method is going to resonate with you, and that's okay as well. It can also be helpful to keep a sort of a journal of what you're experiencing and the different self-soothing techniques that you use to really figure out what it is that works for you. But I think with this work, I think something that is important to remember is just the self-compassion piece. I think there's going to be times where we just naturally gravitate back to our addictive patterns because the subconscious mind likes what is familiar. And it's not just going to be a case of we do these self-soothing techniques once and the addictive pattern is broken. As I said, I still will sometimes catch myself in the act of reverting back to these unhealthy ways of dealing with my emotions. So again, binge watching Netflix. We're all guilty of this. And there's some times when we perhaps do need that. We just need to have sort of a break, and our way to sort of switch off will be watching TV. But it's when it becomes a pattern. When it becomes too much and you recognize, okay, I'm engaging in this behavior more than what I would like to. But being compassionate with yourself, I think, is key, and knowing that, it's not going to be perfect straight away, and the pattern may take a while to break. But I hope this has been eye-opening for you, because when I discovered it, it certainly was very much eye-opening for me. I'm not somebody that has an addictive personality. I just really struggled for a long time to self-soothe. So yeah, if it does resonate with you, please let me know. Come and say hello on Instagram at Dani_Watson_coaching. And if you would like to dive into this further, there is going to be a workshop on how to effectively self-soothe and break your addictive patterns for good. Now that workshop is going to be inside the brand new app, which is launching soon. Now, I'd love to be able to give you a date on when it is going to be launched. However, we are still waiting for the developers to finish off our Android version. So as soon as it has been released, you will be the first to find out about it. If you're on our mailing list as well, we will also be sending an email out. I'm really excited to share more, but again, if you're interested in this subject, this is something that will be explored deeper inside the app. So all will be revealed soon, ladies. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will catch you on the next episode. If you are wanting to build your own successful online coaching business, make sure to check out Freedom, Abundance and Impact, our free 10-day business and mindset course for coaches and aspiring coaches. To access, simply head to wearetheclick.com and click free course in the menu.